The concept of Introduction to Biblical Perspectives on Prosperity sets the stage for exploring how prosperity is understood and discussed within the context of the Bible. In Christian theology, prosperity is not merely about material wealth, but encompasses well-being, spiritual growth, and fulfillment of God's will. The Bible offers a nuanced view, often linking prosperity to righteousness, obedience, and trust in God, rather than mere financial success. This perspective is crucial as it reframes the commonly held notion of prosperity, highlighting the spiritual and moral dimensions over simple economic gain. The significance of understanding biblical perspectives on prosperity lies in its ability to guide believers on how to align their lives with Christian teachings. It challenges the prevailing culture's materialistic values and invites a holistic view of well-being, where faith, ethical living, and community service play central roles. For instance, Proverbs 3:9-10 suggests that honoring God with one's wealth leads to abundance, while Matthew 6:33 emphasizes seeking the kingdom of God. These scriptures exemplify how biblical teachings prioritize spiritual prosperity over material wealth, encouraging believers to focus on a deeper, more meaningful life purpose. In practical terms, this perspective can manifest in personal finance management, where believers prioritize ethical investments and charitable giving, reflecting their faith values. Another real-world application is observed in Christian communities that practice communal living or shared resources, reflecting early church practices as seen in Acts 4:32. These examples underscore how biblical views on prosperity translate into tangible actions that align with spiritual values. Support for this idea can be found in theological circles that emphasize the prosperity gospel's dangers, which equate faith with financial success. Critics argue that such interpretations misrepresent the Bible's message, which often warns of the spiritual pitfalls of wealth, as seen in 1 Timothy 6:10. However, challenges arise as some contemporary theologians advocate for a balance where financial prosperity achieved ethically can coexist with spiritual well-being. This debate indicates that perspectives on prosperity are diverse and sometimes contentious. Ultimately, the biblical perspective on prosperity influences other aspects of faith such as stewardship, generosity, and integrity. It encourages believers to view their resources as tools for serving others and fulfilling God's purposes. By understanding prosperity this way, individuals and communities can foster a holistic approach to life. Prosperity in the Old Testament, particularly under the themes of blessings and promises, serves as a foundational concept for understanding biblical views on wealth and success. In the Old Testament context, prosperity is often depicted as a tangible sign of God's favor and covenantal faithfulness. It includes material wealth, abundant harvests, and large families, which are considered blessings bestowed by God in response to obedience, faithfulness, and adherence to His commandments. The significance of this point in relation to the main topic of biblical prosperity is profound. In the Old Testament, prosperity is not merely an individualistic notion, but is tied to the community's overall well-being and relationship with God. This perspective highlights the importance of collective righteousness and the role of divine favor in achieving prosperity. Examples of prosperity in the Old Testament include the lives of figures like Abraham and Solomon. Abraham is promised abundant descendants and land, which symbolize God's covenant and blessings. His wealth and prosperity are signs of God's favor and the unfolding of divine promises. Solomon's reign, marked by unparalleled wealth and wisdom, illustrates a period of peace and prosperity attributed to his initial devotion to God. These narratives serve as real-world applications of how prosperity in the Old Testament reflects divine approval and fulfillment of promises. Opinions supporting this idea emphasize the Old Testament's portrayal of God as a provider and protector, rewarding faithfulness with prosperity. However, this concept is not without challenges or controversies. Critics argue that the prosperity depicted in the Old Testament can sometimes be misconstrued as a prosperity gospel, which suggests a direct correlation between faith and material wealth. Additionally, alternative viewpoints highlight instances where prosperity is achieved through human ambition rather than divine blessing, questioning the simplistic equation of righteousness with material success. In the biblical sense, prosperity is not solely about material wealth or success, but encompasses spiritual well-being, moral integrity, and the fulfillment of God's promises. Jesus and the apostles emphasized spiritual richness over material abundance, teaching that true prosperity entails a life aligned with God's will, marked by love, faith, and generosity. The significance of this point within the broader topic of biblical prosperity lies in its countercultural message. In a world that often equates success with wealth and power, the New Testament provides a framework for understanding prosperity as a holistic and spiritual endeavor. Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, highlights blessings in poverty of spirit and meekness. suggesting that spiritual riches far outweigh earthly possessions. Similarly, the Apostle Paul, in letters like Philippians, speaks of contentment in all circumstances, underscoring that prosperity is rooted in a deep relationship with God, irrespective of material condition. One example illustrating this concept is the story of the widow's offering in the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus praises a poor widow for her small but sincere donation at the temple, valuing her generosity over the larger contributions of the wealthy. This teaches that prosperity is measured by the heart's intentions rather than financial input. Another example is Paul's own life. Despite facing persecution and hardship, Paul considers himself rich in spiritual blessings, demonstrating how steadfast faith and divine purpose define true prosperity. Supporters of this interpretation often argue that it encourages a life of gratitude, humility, and generosity, steering individuals toward an authentic Christian life. They assert that it shifts focus from accumulating wealth to fostering community, serving others, and nurturing one's spiritual journey. However, challenges arise in light of the prosperity gospel, a controversial doctrine suggesting that faith and positive confession can lead to material wealth and health. Critics argue this misinterprets biblical teachings, misleading believers into equating faith with financial gain. Others contend the New Testament's stance on prosperity can be difficult to reconcile with real-world economic struggles, prompting some to question its practicality. This perspective on prosperity profoundly influences other aspects of biblical teaching, such as stewardship, charity, and social justice, encouraging believers to evaluate success not just through personal gain but through communal and spiritual enrichment. Spiritual prosperity, as described in the context of biblical teachings, extends beyond the accumulation of material wealth to encompass a state of inner well-being, fulfillment, and a vibrant relationship with God. It involves cultivating virtues such as love, patience, humility, and peace, and maintaining a life marked by faith, obedience, and gratitude. This form of prosperity is significant in biblical teachings because it underscores the eternal and intangible blessings of a life lived in accordance with God's will, rather than the transient allure of material gain. The importance of spiritual prosperity in biblical teachings is profound. While material wealth can provide comfort and security, it is often seen as fleeting and susceptible to loss. Spiritual prosperity, on the other hand, offers a sense of peace and contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. This aligns with scriptural references such as Matthew 6:19-21, which advises storing up treasures in heaven rather than on earth, emphasizing values that are eternal and fulfilling. The first is the life of Mother Teresa, who, despite her lack of material wealth, was rich in love, compassion, and service to others. Her life reflected spiritual prosperity through her unwavering commitment to helping the impoverished and sick, embodying the biblical principle of serving others as a path to spiritual fulfillment. Another example is found in individuals who have experienced personal transformation through faith, reporting increased inner peace and purpose despite facing financial hardships. These examples reflect the biblical notion that true richness is found in a life aligned with spiritual values, not in material abundance. Opinions supporting spiritual prosperity emphasize that it leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Spiritual leaders often advocate that genuine joy and peace come from nurturing one's soul in relationships with others, rather than chasing material success. Some argue that equating spirituality with prosperity can become problematic if it dismisses the real struggles of poverty and the need for economic justice. Furthermore, in a world that often measures success by financial gain, embracing spiritual prosperity can be countercultural and challenging. This concept ties into broader biblical discussions about prosperity by emphasizing holistic well-being. Ultimately, it encourages a balanced approach where material resources are seen as tools for serving others and enhancing one's spiritual journey.